Oh, let's talk to you, Tash.
All right. According to the Googles, we are live. You'd mentioned something about my lower third there, Tyler.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. All right, folks. I'm your host, a little bit unprepared, in spite of my efforts to the contrary. That still makes me your host, Dash V. With me today, I've got the usual lineup and a surprise for you, but Lizzie will introduce the surprise when it's her turn. So, with me today, I have
T-Blackmire.
Fire Pilot.
Lizzie Hedgehog. And I'm actually really happy because we have a really awesome guest from the old Sega days. This is Craig's, how do I say your last name?
Stitt.
Stitt?
Stitt. S-T-I-T-T. 3 T's.
Stitt. Awesome. Okay. Well, Stitt is an artist from back in the old Sega days. Some of his works were Kid Chameleon on the Sega Genesis. He did Sonic 2 artwork. I'm so happy. Sonic Spinball, my favorite Sonic game ever. I mean, everybody else hates it. For PlayStation, he did Spyro the Dragon, right?
Spyro the Dragon.
Spyro the Dragon, Spyro 2. He did Spyro the Dragon, Year of the Dragon. He was a senior artist on that. He worked on Ratchet Clank, Ratchet Clank Going Commando. He also worked on Ratchet Clank Up Your Arsenal. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Ratchet Deadlocked. So he did a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, as I understand it, Craig, there were a lot of rejected names as well, right? For those Ratchet and Clank games.
There were a lot of rejected names. Some that weren't fun. Some that went a little too far. I wish I could remember them. They're written down someplace probably, but I don't remember them.
Probably on a bathroom stall somewhere. They're written down, right?
Probably.
So
actually,
now,
naming stuff is one of the hardest things, actually. Surprise. Naming stuff. The name of a character is one of the hardest things in making a game. But anyway.
Yeah, there's a pie chart out there somewhere that says that, right? Like design, development, planning, and they're like all different pieces of the pie chart. But then 98% of the chart is naming stuff.
Yeah, I would have to. Yeah, it really is. We didn't have a name for Spyro until 2 weeks before press release, and same thing with yeah, it's been a problem since day one. Every game I've ever worked on, except for Ratchet Clank. That one, first name out of the gate, everyone liked and legal passed, so we were good.
Nice. So you passed both hurdles with that one.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Now with Spyro, though, from what I understand, you did more than just artwork for Spyro, right? Like you invented the character, didn't you?
Well, in one sense, the initial concept was mine to do a game about a dragon. I had always wanted to make a game where you get to be the dragon and not slay the dragon. And so that I came up with a game with that was that premise, and the rest of the team at that time there was just 4 of us at Insomniac, and we took that and Mark Cerny, who was our producer, kind of looked into the future and looked at that, and it was grow and what he just stay young, stay cute, because our market was going to be younger. And so we kept, and so then it morphed into something else. My game, initially, the raw concept, being much of a, this is going to sound wrong, adult game, but it ended up, yeah. So Spyro's my baby. He wouldn't be there. Insomniac probably would not have done Spyro if it hadn't been the concept I put. And then a lot of the artwork is mine. In it.
Now, from what I understand too, green was not his original color. Green was his original color, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was. When we first built him, and I didn't do the actual drawing for Spyro. I didn't design the character. We actually ended up bringing in a character. That's what he did. Zemeckis, I can't remember his first name. Designed Spyro, and then we actually took several of his drawings and cut and pasted them together to get the one everyone liked each piece of. And I did the textures for him, and he was, dragon, green, and he was great until we put him out on a test field that was, grass, green, and he just disappeared. You couldn't see him. And there were several other games coming out with different characters that were also green, And so we decided we had to start playing with colors. So I did a whole rainbow series of Spyro in all these different colors, and we put them side by side on, and looked at them and decided which one worked and he ended up being purple.
Nice.
So,
Interesting.
You could have done a Yoshi version, all the colors.
actually, I'm kind of surprised at some point we haven't, somebody hasn't done that. But I guess he's well known as the little, the purple dragon. But he looked really good red, but red blew out, and anyway.
Now you also did artwork for Sonic, right? You did for Sonic 2. You actually did 2 zones worth of artwork, but only one of them actually made it in the game. Is that true?
That is true. Well, the Oil Ocean I did, and which is like the 8th level in the game. It's quite a ways into the game, if I remember right. But after I did that, I did a level that was the Hidden Palace Zone. That
the infamous Hidden Palace Zone.
Infamous Hidden Palace Zone, which I did not know would be infamous when I was doing the artwork. It was 3 days before we shipped the game that I play it, and my level wasn't there. And I was told it didn't fit. There wasn't room on the cartridge. And I was very depressed about that, but we didn't, cartridge was a hard limit. And but then about 6 months later, somebody on somewhere with a Game Shark or something hacked in and found it. It was there. They hadn't had time to finish programming it. And so this whole mythology built up around it, which was kind of fun. I guess that actually turned out in the long run to be more fun, to have it be so mysterious and truly a hidden palace.
So did this make you kind of famous a little bit?
Yeah, once I convinced people that I was actually the artist who had done it. I had a lot of people say, no, no, you're not, no, you're not. But yeah, it is kind of a famous level in the Spyro universe because it was hidden, it was lost, and there was all this mythology behind it that some of it's real and some of it's not. The whole crystal lookup, that I needed a big, the giant emerald. The master chaos or whatever. It's I just needed a plug for one of the tubes you could jump down at. And so there's all these and stuff. It's fun. It's been, and I'm really excited they finished, and it's out there now. People have seen it. People can play it, and so I'm thrilled now.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, but just so I can kind of recap, what he was mentioning was that that there was a giant crystal in the Hidden Palace level, and the purpose of it was that it was just an obstruction that you're through to get to the next part of the level. But this huge mythology built up with all these people wondering, what is this giant crystal? Is this the Master Emerald? And people came up with names for it and all this other stuff. And then on an interview, Craig's just like, no, it was just supposed to block your path, and you break through it and keep going. And people were like, still to this day, people don't want to believe it. They want to believe that there's something more, that the meaning of life is held in that crystal or something.
Oh man,
I almost busting that bubble. Maybe I should have said, oh yeah, that it really was meant to be the master.
Yeah.
Because afterwards I kind of felt bad for
that crystal unlocked the blast processing within the Sega Genesis.
There we go.
Right.
Oh man, I remember years ago when I played it, and I remember reading a Nintendo Power. Somebody claimed that they could get to the level, and I was like. And people were like, no, how do you do that? Even Nintendo Power wrote back to that guy in the magazine and said, well, can you take a screenshot and show us how you got into Hidden Palace? He goes, oh, well, it happened so long ago, I don't have a picture. And I was like, okay, so me being Miss, I'm going to be a perfectionist and beat the Sonic game because back then I had no life. I played Sonic 2. I beat every level with perfect bonus, like the perfect timing bonus, the perfect bonus where if you clear every ring, every enemy, every TV thingy, you could get a perfect bonus. So I did that. Every single Chaos Emerald I got perfect. I got every ring. I don't know how I did this, but I got everything without Tails screwing it up. I got perfect everything. I honestly believed, okay, if I do this, when I get to the very end, Hidden Palace will show up. Never did.
Yeah, it's. I don't think Sega did not mean for it to be accessible by any means, from my understanding. It was already on there, but if you had the right, you had the Game Shark or whatever it was called, or you knew how to hack in, and I'm not even sure if there isn't a key. I don't know, but I know there are ways to get into it. It showed up.
Well, there are some other levels, because I remember reading that because those levels weren't finished, that's why they had that funky split screen where everybody looks like all short and chubby looking, and all the music from those levels are from the Hidden Palace and those other levels. And so
there were a number of levels that Hidden Palace wasn't the only one to get cut. There was a forest level, there was a desert level, and unfortunately, those artists didn't get. A couple of the artists didn't get any art in the game. They spent a year or two working on it and got nothing. The game
some of those names were kind of weird. Like one was called Genocide City. I'm like, really, really, Sega? Why that name? I remember there was Wood Zone.
Death Egg Zone.
Yeah, but I remember hearing, because I listened to the Sonic stuff out there, that Chemical Plant was originally supposed to be Death Egg, and part of the design is actually Hidden Palace. Like if you actually compare them, like the little loops that you go through are actually Chemical Plant. And that was something I learned about that game, because everything was so like, we're in a hurry, we got to hurry this up, and that's what they did. So yeah. Chemical Plant was supposed to be Death Egg, and it's got bits and pieces of Hidden Palace.
I don't know about the connection with Hidden Palace, but I do remember something about Death Egg and the Chemical Zone. I remember the artwork. His name was Yamaguchi, incredible artist, and luckily a very fast artist, because I think that was the third version of that artwork that before everyone was finally happy with it. So he reworking, finally got what you see today. I think that's the level he kept redoing.
That's awesome. Now I understand, Lizzie. You mentioned some frustrations with Tails and everything.
Yes.
In an alternate world, in an alternate version of our universe, Sonic's sidekick in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is not, in fact, Tails or Miles Prower, as some know him, but it was in fact a turtle, was it not?
A turtle?
It was. When they put out the idea that they wanted a second character for Sonic 2, I put forth the idea of a turtle whose name was Boomer, so Sonic Boom.
Still got it.
He would be slow, and kind of not a particularly good character walking around. He's a turtle, but he could pull in his legs, and jets would would shoot out, and he would become kind of this hoverboard, floating jet-powered platform that Sonic could jump on and fly through and do special levels and fly over spikes and lava and acid and zoom around on this jet-powered buddy. But it never got past my sketchbook.
So that's really interesting. That's really interesting. So how does it feel now to hear about on the cell phone version of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 that's officially made and licensed by Sega and all that stuff? They actually have a fully functional version of Hidden Palace Zone.
I love that. The fact that it hurt. To this day, it's still some of my favorite art, even though it was just 8-bit pixel by pixel drawing. It's still some of my favorite art. I'm not happy with the distant background, but the foreground and it's my favorite art. And so it hurt to know it was stuck on a disc on my desk at work, and no one would ever see it. And so I was happy when someone hacked in and found it. I'm thrilled, when Sega released it for real and finished it, and then more so now that and especially those 8-bit games, they're perfect for the phone. I'm thrilled to see side-scrolling coming back and platform-type play come back, because I think got pushed out of the game world prematurely. You know, as soon as you could do 3D, everyone went 3D. It's like, no, there's still a lot of fun with 2D, and 3D is great, but just because you can doesn't mean you necessarily should. And so with the new phones and the games on the phones and being able to go back and rediscover 2D and side scroll gameplay, I'm thrilled, and particularly thrilled that my artwork's out there. 25 years later.
Yeah, that's great that it finally arrived. Yeah.
So we got a question from Twitter.
Go ahead, Fighter Pilot.
G-Wall wants to know, Craig, what was it like moving from 2D to 3D?
The first game, my transition from 2D to 3D was Sonic or the last couple games I worked on at Sega, and then going to Insomniac and doing Disruptor. That was my transitional game from 2D to 3D. And the biggest change was you weren't drawing. You didn't have 16 colors and drawing things pixel by pixel by pixel. You were just in Photoshop painting. But then also the fact that, yeah, you were building it, and now something didn't happen. And then from an artist standpoint, the really big thing with going from 2D to 3D, when you do something 2D, it's like a painting or a drawing. It just has to look good from one direction. A 3D world, you have to walk around and have it look good from every direction. And so it was liberating and a little terrifying at the same time. It was a lot more work. It was simpler in one way and a lot more work in the other. So, yeah, it was a real mind shift for me to go from 2D to 3D.
I can imagine. That kind of dovetails into. That was a really good question. Who threw that out there?
His name is G-Wald. He's on Twitter. If he hits notifications, he'll see.
All right. Hey, thank you very much for sending us in a message. This is a good time, actually, to remind folks. You can send in your own questions to us here live while we're on the show. Hashtag RRPFTW. We monitor that hashtag on the Twitterverse, and if we see your question and we still got time in the show, we'll throw it his way. While we're on that topic, though, of the jump from 2D to 3D, it's very similar to a question that I actually had for you about how has the tooling that you had then to work on a game like Sonic the Hedgehog or whatever changed to you fast forward all the way to a game like Ratchet and Clank.
Oh, it's tremendous. There's the frustrating artists, and it's probably frustrating for everybody on the team, is there's a huge change even between games, even on the same platform. Everything gets updated and changed. But when you change from one platform to the next, or from one generation system to the next, it's a whole new world. If I go back to the system that was used to make Sonic the Hedgehog or Kid Chameleon, it was this big box called a digitizer, which it didn't digitize anything. That's just what Sega called it. But it was literally designed. You would you'd pick out pixel colors using hexadecimal numbering systems, and put a dot, each and move pixel by pixel and place it one at a time. So if you wanted to animate a character, you'd literally move the pixels, and you build. It's just very time consuming. And you'd have to build the whole level that way. And then you got up where you started to be able to do a little bit of paint on I'll say a computer, as opposed to this specialized hardware Sega made. But that was still, you're still kind of very limited in your colors. And then you get up where you go from the transition from the Genesis, NES era into the PS1 stage, where you actually have real 3D. And real textures, and now you're working on the computer, and for the coloring and textures, you're using programs like Photoshop, and that are still around today. They've just grown exponentially, but they're still basically the same. And then but now you're building, instead of drawing the worlds, you're building the worlds, kind of like you're building them out of clay or out of cardboard boxes, and stacking them and building them and shaping them in 3D. And that software has just gotten better and better and more complicated, and the lighting's gotten much more dramatic, and and so it's the transitions have been huge.
Now, I think you mentioned before, this was off show though, you mentioned that there was a building in one of the Ratchet and Clank games that was the size and polygon count of an entire world in one of the Spyro games. Is that true?
Yes, it was. If you go back to a Spyro world, if I remember the numbers right, a Spyro world, everything was made up with little polygons, made up the world, made up the characters. And a big Spyro world was about 8,000 polygons, made up the entire world that you could run through. Jump to the PS2 and Ratchet and Clank, and this really hit me because there's the level Metropolis. So Ratchet comes out and there's this huge. You're looking down this huge city and there's these giant buildings and these flying cars. At the end of that long hallway of buildings is this train station. That building has more than 8,000 polygons in it. Just that one building in the enormous city. Just that building. And if you took the footprint of that building, the square footage, speak, of that building, an entire Spyro world would fit in that.
Wow.
And it's I think Spyro's or Sonic's, excuse me, these names mixed up. Ratchet's, I think Ratchet's boot had more polygons in it than Spyro. I mean, it just is, and I'm sure that magnitude jump, I'm sure has happened with the PS3 and now the PS4, and I'm sure the next system is just going to push it to, pretty soon you're not going to be able to tell what's real and what's cartoon. Well, you can't in the movies anymore, and the games are very quickly catching up to movie quality graphics.
Oh yeah, they got incredibly close on the Xbox One with Quantum Break. I mean, there was definitely a change in quality. So when you're playing the game, you could definitely tell the difference from the live action film sequences that they did to the digitized actors in game, which did a phenomenal job in both modes. But like thinking back and remembering playing through the game, I have a really hard time remembering what story elements of the game were actually live footage versus, in-game engine, animation, because it was just, I mean, the delta wasn't that big. It looked pretty darn impressive either way.
And you just look at the difference between just with it, like on the PS1, when I did Disruptor, the only way we could keep frame rate manageable was to put a fog in. Everything faded out to a flat color. And at the time, once again, Disruptor was praised for its incredible graphics, and it's, you had this very short distance you could actually see. And by the time we got to doing Ratchet and Clank, still a PS2 game, there was polygons. It was trickery, but it was a different kind of trickery. You could see all the way to the horizon. There was buildings and things moving all the way to the horizon. In fact, that was one of the most frustrating things is, we've been really pushing on. This was on Ratchet again. Really pushing the limits of how much we could shove into the game and still have it physically work and not crash and chug and we finally got it down. We figured out, I can't remember how many pages the program or the game designers were allowed to use and how many this and that. And I was given, I was given the art or the map. I was given the map for Metropolis, which kind of became the iconic level for the Ratchet world. It's on a lot of the posters, and I think it's been pretty much all of the games. But they had me this map. It's huge. It's absolutely enormous, and it was also the one that we completely faked to show Sony when, here's how this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this next. But we totally faked everything. It was just billboards and forced perspective and completely, you couldn't move more than a little bit because it'd break the perspective. Now they handed me this map and go, okay, here's the map and you need to do it for real. I did. I said, no, I can't. No. And the boss just looked at me and says, yes, you can. And it worked. I mean, I surprised myself as much as anybody. It actually managed to pull it off, where you can look up and look down and look all the way, and there was polygons and things moving. It was, it still amazes me.
That's awesome. What's great is the Ratchet and Clank collection for the PlayStation 3 takes the first 4 games and up-reses them to, I think it's 720p. and makes them stereoscopic 3D. So if you have a 3D TV and the glasses and everything, you can actually play the games in 3D.
I would love to see that.
Oh man, it totally holds up. I have to tell you, it's not like, you know, actual PS3 generation level graphics. You can still tell it's like up-resed, you know, but they definitely hold up surprisingly well.
Yeah, and that's I've kind of stepped back from the whole industry and I don't, you know, sad to say I don't play much anymore. But you know, talking to you guys here and it makes me very curious to get back in there and really see what's out there and see what the graphics are doing. And I would love to go back and take the original Spyro and, you know, what could I do with it today? You know, what would a Spyro game on the PS4 look like today? I would love, you know, that. I would probably go back to work for that.
Well,
So,
if
Craig,
you're ever in
we
the
have another
San Jose,
question.
go ahead.
So, Suzuki Chef wants to know, Craig, with all you've worked on, what's been the most memorable to you?
Actually, Hidden Palace Zone, it was probably, you know, pretty high on the list, just you know, because I really loved that art and then was so heartbroken to have it not make the game. But also, Spyro holds a very special place in my heart because, you know, that the original concept was mine. And so, you know, the license plate on my car right now says "Go Spyro." And actually, if you're a Spyro fan, his little buddy in the game is Sparks. So the license plate on my motorcycle says "Go Sparks." So it's probably working on the Spyro games because that I felt more connected to that character than any other character I'd worked on. But then again, it's hard to pick. Then again, there's the Sonic games. To have, I remember just feeling incredibly fortunate, being relatively new to the game industry. Well, back then, pretty much everybody was new to the game industry, but new to the game industry. And here I am working on Sonic 2, one of the what turns out to be one of the best-selling games of all time, one of the best-known characters of all time, working with artists and designers and programmers that are world, you know, renowned and recognized. So that was a thrill. So it kind of depends on which part of excitement, you know, I want to focus on, because there's different ones. But yes, so but Spyro has to hold is special to me.
Awesome. Well, I wonder. Tell us about Sonic Spinball, because you said you worked on Spinball a bit.
Spinball. Actually, you said you really like Spinball, and you know most people don't, and I'm with you. I love Sonic Spinball. If I remember right, it came to be because they wanted another Sonic title, and everybody really liked the pinball levels or the casino level in Sonic 2. They liked that gameplay, and so let's do a whole game base, if I remember right. And one of the things that was right at, you know, I did that after Sonic 2, obviously, and if somebody, and I noticed on YouTube somebody pointed this out, the artwork I used for the beginning level of Sonic Spinball is rehashed artwork of Hidden Palace Zone. It's completely different, but it's the same repeating pattern, that's the hard part on those old games, is getting this pattern that repeats but doesn't look like wallpaper. And so, but if you look, it's the same artwork underneath it all. But that was fun. Just a very different style of gameplay, and it was just kind of it was fun. It was a relatively small team, and so it was a fun game to work on.
Which level?
The very first level is mine. The toxic pools.
Toxic caves.
Toxic caves, which actually wasn't supposed to be the first level. It's one of those things where, you know, things get cut and moved around. But yes,
that time it worked in your favor.
It really did. It really did. Actually, what I ended up having to do a palette change so that it fit the storyline of you're coming in at the bottom of the, you know, underwater or something. But yeah, so it really did work in my favor, because it's that when you see pictures of the game, it's typically from the first level. So, but yeah, it's a lot of people don't like it. I enjoy it. It's hard. It's really hard, but you know, I enjoy it.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I also like Kirby's Pinball though, and you know those I like when they take regular franchises and they try them in a different way. I'm a big
do a fun
pinball
little
fan.
spin on 'em, so to speak.
Yeah, no pun intended, right?
No pun intended.
Well, listen, you had another question related to Sonic, but of a more current variety, didn't you?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Well, I am wondering, are you excited for Sonic Mania in the Sonic 2016 project? 17
I,
project. Mhm.
well, I am in this just in the sense that I'm thrilled. I mean, if you had asked me 25 years ago, would people still be playing these games? And Sonic will still survive. Sega will still be around. No, they're still playing those levels. You know, they're being cleaned up and brought up to current technology. So yes, I mean it's very exciting to see that still alive. And once again, it's going back to that wanting to see not wanting to see 2D and side-scrolling games die. That was the hard thing when everything went 3D for me. I loved it was fun. I loved 3D, and it was really fun working in 3D. But I didn't want it to be the death of side-scrollers and platform games. And so, if it's coming back and it's been alive 25 years later, yeah, I'm excited to see it and to be talking. I do a career day every year at a junior high locally, and it's always surprising to me these kids still know my games. I mean, they weren't even born. In some cases their parents weren't born, and that they know the characters and they know the games, and so that's exciting. I feel very fortunate in that respect.
You're gonna buy it, I hope, right?
Well, I need to update my stuff. I'm sad to say the most recent system I have is a PS2.
Oh.
That's acceptable. You're in proper company for that to be acceptable. If you said that you got rid of all your systems, then we'd have to shut down the show right away.
And so just having talked to you here just recently, I went and pulled it out and looked and said, I forgot about that game. Oh yeah, this game. I can't wait to play that again. So.
So I do have a question for you that's still Sonic related before we switch gears off of that. Is it true that at one point Sega was talking to Michael Jackson about possibly doing music for Sonic 3?
That's my understanding. We got word one day that Michael Jackson was going to be coming by the office later that afternoon or early evening. And so, my understanding was I was told he was there. To a huge video game fan, and very specifically a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan. And so he wanted to meet the team that had done Sonic. And so it was like, awesome! And so sure enough, he came in and was just very nice, very polite, very, very soft-spoken. And we're all sitting in a room, sitting there talking to him. And it was just him and I think, I don't know if it was a manager or a bodyguard, just him and a couple of guys, and then the rest of the team. And we sat and talked to him for an hour or so. And he was just very complimentary, really nice. Unfortunately, it was very shortly thereafter that his whole life kind of went sideways.
Yeah.
And Sega distanced himself from him, and so the music deal, if that was why he was there, I'm pretty sure it was, fell through. But it was still a neat chance to actually meet him, say hello, and ask him a question or two, and answer a question or two. So
in an alternate universe, Sonic the Hedgehog is moonwalking as he waits for his turtle friend to pull up so that he can rocket over some spikes.
I like that alternate universe. I like that.
Jeremy, I think... Go ahead.
Given quantum mechanics, that exists somewhere. So yeah, cool.
There you go. Jeremy, I think you said that we had another question from the Twitterverse.
Yes. G1 wants to know, Craig, what do you think of the indie dev scene now?
What do I think of what?
The indie dev, the smaller companies.
Oh, I like that. One of the problems I see is these giant companies and the teams are, when I started with Spyro, basically there were 6 of us making the game. By the time I left Insomniac, I had 15 or 20 people just in the art department, and there was maybe 65 or 70 in the team working on one game. And I'm trying to think, Ratchet or Sonic, maybe 4 or 5 artists, and that many more in order to get these 2 or 3 people work out there. So I love these indie companies, and it takes millions of dollars. I mean, I'm trying to think what the budget was for Sonic 2. It was huge. So you get these small companies. I love the fact, and that's why I love phone games and these smaller games. A couple of guys in their garage can do it, and they can get out there and create these things. Before, you had to have $1 million to produce it, $1 million to publish it and distribute it. You don't need that with the internet and these independent developers. It's 3 guys and someone with half a business sense, and you're in business. You're good. And if you get lucky, you get rich. If not, you just have fun making the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Tyler, you had a question?
Yeah, I did. So you mentioned that you sort of distanced yourself from the industry. So what do you do now, if you don't mind my asking?
Just kind of play. It's I'm gonna start talking to friends, seeing what's out there, and I'm considering going into teaching. My degree is actually in art education, and so I keep looking at going back and teaching art and that. But yeah, just kind of stepped away from the game industry for a while, and now I'm kind of far enough out of it that it would take some work to get back into it. But once again, there's these small that comes back to these small independent developers that. And that's what I miss. That's where I love working in a small group and where everyone's got say and everyone's got input and you're all working together. And that's what a lot of these indie groups. That's what a lot of them are going to have. And so, if I decide I want to get back into it, that I can now because there's going to be a group out there that's they're not going to care I'm in my 50s because who's going to make games? You're too old to make games. It's like And that's a real problem. I've got friends that are having a hard time finding. They've been in the industry since day one, and they're having a hard time finding jobs because the guy hiring them is half their age. So that's getting off on very political.
No, that's okay. I think we understand. Not everybody can kind of see or know, like, hey, your kid that's like playing Sonic 2 on the phone. Yeah, he's playing my level right now, so you might want to rethink whether or not. What the direction this interview is going. So
well, and you kind of have the mentality you fight sometimes of, well, okay, experience versus youth. It's like, well, yeah, but they're young and they can work 100-hour weeks and minimum wage, and versus, well, yeah, I've got 20 years experience, but
yeah, I don't have to work through the weekend because I know a different way to do it. That kind of thing. Yeah. So on the note though of like the more social aspect and everything like that, how's your through working with Sonic 2, through working with Spinball, Spyro, Ratchet and Clank, like all these games that have this following and this fandom, like how much of that following and fandom ever reached you personally throughout those different development cycles?
One example, it's on a personal, it's someone, I'll mention to somebody what I did, and they'll just kind of freak out because they grew up playing Spyro or playing Sonic. Occasionally, I'll get talked, I'll do career days about interacting with fans, and one of my favorite things, add to that list of favorite things. One of my favorite things was during Spyro was I answered all the fan mail, and this was back early enough. Some of it was literally mail, but a lot of it was email. But I actually took it to heart. I actually answered these letters, and I had a few form letters that they just had the same question of, hey, I got stuck on level 4. But I'd actually answer questions, and so I got to know. I got writing, and you got to be pen pals with some of these people, and I'm still very good friends with a family in Ohio. I ended up flying out and spending the weekend with them and meeting them and talking to them, and I'm still friends with them. There were a couple of people, actually girls. Well, they're not girls anymore; they're women now. That wrote me and were, they wanted to get into the industry, and they started asking questions. Well, what should I study in school? And can girls do this? Back then, it really was, can a girl get into the industry? What should I study at school? And I don't know how many people really follow through on that, but I know of at least 2 personally who have contacted me and said thank you. I'm now making games. I went. I've got my degree in making games. Or I'm working with this company now, and that was incredible. That I was able to have that kind of impact on somebody. So it made it worthwhile. I wasn't just making games. But
I had myself on mute. I apologize. So I believe Lizzie has a question for you.
yes.
Lizzie, you're on mute. I'll take you off mute.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, do you have any gaming memorabilia from, back in your gaming days? Because I actually have a couple. Check it out. This is still in the package.
I can see a couple.
From
Oh, okay.
And
Actually, I remember that. I remember that.
Did you work on the contest?
I remember judging something. I can't remember the details or something.
Well, like for example, I also got the hat from the Lifesavers. I hate Lifesavers candy now, but I did it for Sonic.
I used to have a bunch of hats. I can't find my hats. I've got a few stuffed animals like you have behind you, although I don't have the ones behind you. I've got a smaller Sonic. I don't know if I even have a Tails. But I've got some jackets. I've got a silk tie that's all the various Sega games from the time. I found some posters just this evening and some lapel pins and stuff. But a lot of it I've given away over the years, not realizing that, hey, maybe But on the other hand, it's just gonna sit in a box or sit on a shelf in my house. I'm glad somebody's having fun with it. But,
yes.
You definitely look like you like to collect. I noticed the Stormtrooper in the back of your...
I do have a lot of collections. Lego. I love Legos and Star Wars. There's a lot of Star Wars stuff just because there is so much Star Wars stuff. It's easy to collect. But yeah, science fiction, Star Trek. There's Legos everywhere here. There's a whole rack, and that's just the Star Wars Legos.
If you had the opportunity to work on some of the newer Lego games, would you take it?
That would be fun. Or actually working at Lego. I'd actually love to work at Lego designing Lego sets. That would actually be. I used to joke that would be the one job I would change careers for. And even when I was making top of the career making video games, the one job I would change over to would be actually designing Lego sets. But some of the when those first came out, I kind of was like, oh, that's kind of a silly idea. No, Lego hit the mark with those. They found the right people, and they really found out how to do this. So yeah, that would be fun. But
speaking of Legos, Lego Dimensions. Did you see that they're bringing out Sonic the Hedgehog later this fall?
Oh, no, I did not see that. I know I've been watching them and watching the sets just because I like Legos, and just thinking, this would be fun. These would be some fun characters, and they should do that. And so, no, I hadn't heard about Sonic, so I will definitely have to keep it out.
Oh yeah, and it's the classic one. They're doing alternate dimensions, universes. Like the Ghostbusters, a bunch of '80s stuff, Harry Potter, Batman, of course. But yeah, there's special edition Lego Dimensions. It has a Sonic level. It's got the little plane from the Sonic All Stars game, his little blue car, and Sonic himself. Oh, it's so cool! Awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely a nerdy collector junkie.
That's okay. You're in a safe space here. This is a safe.
Yeah, I figure I don't have to worry about that here. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a safe,
So
judgment-free
it
zone.
kind of has to rotate. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to bring up something that we've kind of, like much of the industry did back in the day, something that got kind of like glazed over, but I think, you know, I think it's our loss, really. Let's talk about Kid Chameleon for a little bit, and because I understand you worked on that for a while, and to me that's always been kind of an underrated title for the Genesis. I think if you hit, eBay right now, you can find it still complete for like $20, which is a deal, by the way. But like from what I understand, there was a time where there was the thought that maybe this would be the mascot that Sega was looking for. Is that right? Like, give us a little bit about that.
That was, so Kid Chameleon was the very first game I worked on. Sega Technical Institute, or STI, had been formed just a few months before, or a short time before, and they were actually doing a game, Dick Tracy, which they were just finishing up when I started. So my first game was Kid Chameleon, and I did in environment was the first I did some of the. I think the rhino helmet guy. What I was doing when I was doing that. But yeah, so that was my first game, and it was the hope. Once again, this was with Mark Cerny, who's gone on to incredible things. He at the time was looking for a mascot. Nintendo had Mario, and Sega needed a mascot, and they kind of had Kid. Oh, it was a Japanese game, Kid something. In Japan.
Alex the Kid.
Oh,
Alex the Kid. There we go. Alex.
Okay.
The Kid. And so Mark was thinking, he's like, hey, maybe we can, if we can spruce that up and bring it up, maybe we can become Sega's mascot. And so we're busy. We're gonna with the intent of really shooting for the mascot, and also the other big goal was the biggest game. In the side scrolls, they were measured by how many screens scrolled by. And I think actually on the box was more than 18,000 screens or 1,800 screens, or it was huge. It was enormous, huge. But so we're working on it, and then we got an alpha. This is actually kind of an interesting story because it's amazing how much it changed. We got the alpha of Sonic, and we played it, and really we were impressed. It was because a few weeks later, beta, and the big difference between the beta of Sonic and the alpha and the beta of Sonic is by the time of the beta, the rings were in. So when we first played it, you weren't picking up any rings. When you got hit, nothing really happened, and so you're just running through these loops and you're running and jumping. It wasn't particularly fun. And we pretty much knew from right then that we had lost the mascot. They put those rings, but it was amazing the difference. Rings, no rings, and yeah, we knew at that moment that was going to be Sega's game. But yeah, so Kid Chameleon, since they kind of came out about the same time, kind of got lost in that. Kind of got hosed in that, and so you've got there's some hardcore Kid Chameleon fans, but it didn't get the recognition of the sales that it could have. Just not because it was a bad game. It came out against Sonic, and you can't do that.
Yes.
And there was something else that later on came out. Oh, the same thing happened with Disruptor when I was in Insomniac. Disruptor, we got A+ reviews from almost every magazine, but released at the same time was Doom for the PS1, which was a horrible, unplayable game on the PS1, and one of the Star Wars Dark Forces games on the PS1, marginally playable on the PS1. But we were going up against Doom and Star Wars, and then Lara Croft came out, and that was a great game. So yeah, so Disruptor got kind of disappeared, but it was the same thing with Kid Chameleon. Really, yeah, it didn't get the coverage, but I'm pleasantly surprised when I'll say that name how often people do recognize it. Oh, I remember that was my favorite game. So, It's
Yeah,
nice.
definitely a good game. And to kind of rewind, I guess, back a little bit, we're coming up close on time, but we actually have somebody here that's on the show that has a personal connection with Sonic that Sonic 2 and Sonic Spinball was certainly a part of. And so, in the spirit of like, best, fan experiences and stuff like that, um, I'll let Lizzie tell you what she thinks of those games and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to say I'm really glad that I met someone like you. It I didn't cry when Thomas was on, but see, back in '93, I never really something happened to me. In early of March, they found a brain tumor in me, and by the time they found it, it was about 2 weeks for it to spread, and so they didn't give me much of a chance to live because they said no matter what decision is made here, you're probably not going to live because where the brain tumor was located was right above the brain stem, just barely touching it. And if anyone knows about brain stem surgery, actually is what they call it, you don't really live. And you can't perform the surgery either. So no matter what they decide, it's a death sentence. And so the decision had to be mine to say, okay, I'll have the surgery and whatever happens, happens. So of course I had the surgery and I was blessed with wonderful doctors who, took the brain tumor out. The problem was that I had to learn everything over again. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn to walk, talk again. I had to learn to eat with my hands again. All these personal things that we learn as kids, I had to do it over again. I couldn't even take a bath for myself or wipe myself and do, all those basic things that you learn. My mom had to do it for me, and my mom was really afraid to let me do it by myself. She was afraid to wash my hair because they actually had shaved all my hair off, and she was actually afraid to wash my hair. She was afraid to like put shampoo in it and rinse it out. I mean, when they took the tumor out, they actually cut the whole back of my head open. So that's a huge scar, and nobody can see it because it grew my hair long. And so when I had to go back to school, I was bullied a lot in school because I was still in recovery. It was only a few months since the surgery in March, and I was stuttering really badly. I was always stumbling and when I would walk. I couldn't do PE classes because I would fall over. I couldn't hold like a badminton racket. All these things everybody else could do, I couldn't because I had to learn everything all over again. And I was bullied so badly, and I was humiliated all the time in school. And people would wish me dead and say, "Well, you should have died from your surgery instead. Why are you here? Ew!" And people would remind me how ugly I looked, and it was just a big mess. And there were days that I didn't want to go to school, and I would beg my parents, can I stay home? So my dad was like, okay, you can stay home with us, but we got to go to the store. So my parents took them with them to the store, and I was used to going to the electronic sections at Sam's Club and stuff like that. So back back in the 90s, they used to have TVs on display with the different
Mm-hmm.
consoles for you to play a game. And at the time, they had the Super Nintendo and they had the Sega Genesis. Now, prior to this, I never really heard of the Sega Genesis because I was such pain and going through such you know misery that I didn't even know Sonic existed. But at that time, I found it because I saw the Sega Genesis and I saw the Super Nintendo. Now, because I grew up with Mario, of course I wanted to play that, but I couldn't even hold the controllers. I mean it was impossible because my hands would shake. But when I reached the Sega Genesis controller, I could actually put my hand around it and be able to kind of mash the buttons, but it was very difficult because my hand would shake so badly. But my dad had been watching me play, and he later bought it for me, and I asked him why. He told me, well, you look so happy, like you were actually enjoying it. And so, he bought it for me and brought it home. And I would play the games. I would try to play the games, and it would really help me. And then around that time, also, the comics came out from Archie Comics. That they came out around the same time in '93, and so did the TV shows. But the cartoons would keep me happy because you come from school, you get bullied, the cartoons make you happy. You got the comics, and they would help me to read and actually focus on speaking again. But the games were really a lot of help for me because even though they were very difficult, it gave me the courage to want to, hold the button and mash it. Even though my hand would shake, I would be, determined to want to beat that level. I wasn't very good at Sonic 1 or 2 or Spinball at first, but I was determined to play because I had, fallen in love with Sonic, and Sonic was like, at the time, my best friend, he was there for me, he was keeping me happy, he was keeping me motivated, I wanted to go to school, I wanted to try to pass that test at school. And that's what Sonic did for me. I mean, the game really gave me determination to want to actually finish the game and have fun with the game. And I just wanted to know that, that's why Sonic meant so much to me. It's because I went through all this difficulty that no child in '93 would expect to happen to him. But, in that same year is when you discover, Sonic and all these awesome things, and the games just meant so much to me. And I just really wanted you to know that.
I think more, that really means a lot. And I think a lot of it, too, is you're saying that and you're talking about it. I'm picturing the first time I saw Sonic on the screen. There was a personality there. He turns. He was the first one, to my knowledge, that would turn to the screen and tap his foot and look at you. Hey, we're waiting here, and so you had a connection to the character. But I think your story, more designers and artists and programmers need to hear. It's good for them to hear those kinds of stories because it gives more purpose to what they're doing. They're not just having fun. A lot of these games are just fun to people. They're escapes or whatever. But in talking to some of the fan mail, because I had people writing me who were ill or sick or had issues in their lives, and this was their way of dealing and their way of getting back in. And so it's really nice to hear that. Even though I only had a small part to play in it, that. He was there for you. That somebody was there to give you that extra little, whatever it is you needed, that kept you going and got you where you are now. I'm going to guess in '93 you would not have ever guessed you'd be sitting here, going out with your life and doing things. And so that's just one. It's good to hear. I'm glad.
Yeah. Because when I was younger, I entered so many contests. There was a fruit roll-ups contest where you got to be president of Sega for a day. I wanted to win that so badly. I wanted to meet all of y'all and tell y'all my brain tumor story in person when I was younger. Rock the Rock for Sonic and Knuckles. I actually won for Houston, but my mom misunderstood and I got, pushed aside.
I remember being out on Alcatraz during that. I was actually out on the island during the competition. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I was so devastated when my mom didn't let me go because she misunderstood. And I still bring it up to her every now and then. I tell her, Mom, I really hate that you did that to me. But, it meant so much back then to have actually met all of y'all and be able to tell y'all in person. Because, it's very difficult to have that surgery, to have 2 weeks to live, beat it, but then realize you have to learn everything over again, and that the only thing you had was a bunch of video games, and it was Sonic the Hedgehog. Other people would probably laugh at it, but then you're like, no, because you don't understand how scary that was to be told in 2 weeks you're going to die, but you beat it. And now you're in recovery, but what's making you happy is Sonic. And yeah, Sonic actually had a personality that actually grabbed my attention that made me want to keep trying. That's what made him so different.
Well, I think it was a wonderful game for someone like that that's needing to relearn this because it was very the core controls, you could play the game with nothing but just pushing a button.
Mm-hmm.
Little kids can play, or someone that's having to relearn their motor skills can play. Moms and dads can play. And so I think there's a few games. Spyro was another one that I got a lot of letters from parents saying that the kids are always going, Mom, come play this game with me. Well, the moms didn't want to. Well, Mom, they could play Spyro, or at least they enjoyed watching their kids play Spyro. And so I think Spyro and Sonic, I think I'm very lucky to be involved with both of those because I think they have something in common there, that they've touched people and allowed people to just, they've touched people in a way that, you wouldn't think games would, but they clearly do. So that's really nice to hear. It's.
I'm noticing that we're bumping right up on time, which I think is about right. So I think I'll wrap up the show with my personal thanks to you and other folks that we've had from Sega, in the past. Tom and folks. In general, a lot of the older, I'll say the battle tested, and the kind of forefathers of our gaming that we know and that we grew up with have been really, really gracious and really, really great about coming on the show, talking with us, hanging out with us, reminiscing with us about older times. Sometimes I think better times. My Sega Genesis has never when I turned it on to play Sonic told me, oh, I'm sorry, let me download an update for the next 5 hours and then you can play Sonic, right? It's never told me, oh, hey, I'm sorry, this cartridge that you just put in got delisted, so you can't play that anymore. So on the one hand, I love modern technology, and like you said, I love when we get things. I'm looking forward to Sonic Mania. I really love the Sonic collection on the iPhone and things like that, but not such a fan of the digital stuff. But I am always appreciative. I never imagined as a kid reading the Nintendo Powers or writing fan mail. Mine was always the letter that never got answered. I never wrote you. Had I knew that you were the guy that sent the replies, I would have written letters to you. But
I was the letter published.
So, but
I was a People magazine. Never mind.
I certainly never thought that I would be having like a face-to-face chat with some of the artists, some of the designers, and the CEO of some of the companies that pioneered the games and the systems that I love. So thank you very much for being on the show and hanging out with us and
my pleasure.
Talking with us about all time.
One last thing that just based on what you just said is, and it's one of the things that I find really enjoyable here about the games are these old games, the games that I grew up playing or grew up making. Kids still know them. They're still being played. As opposed to, if I get talking old movies, there's movies that I consider ground classics. You had to have seen this movie. If you want to call yourself a sci-fi fan or a such and such fan, you have to have seen. They've never heard of it. It's like, what do you mean you've never heard of Blade Runner? Really? No, come on. You have to watch Blade Runner. I bet kids that have not seen Star Wars, the original Star Wars. They know the prequels backwards and forwards. They've never seen Star Wars. But I go to these schools and I talk to these kids. They know these games. They're still being played. Like you said, you can plug a Genesis in, it still plays. And they're still fun. The gameplay is still fun. So
I love my 32X. I'm sure that's not said by many people, but I
don't think I've ever said that.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for being on the show again, man. We really appreciate it. If you ever want to, take a trip down memory lane and play some of these games, my Genesis, my 32X, they all still work. So if you ever want to fire up some of these older games,
that might be fun.
And do a playthrough, hit me up if you're in San Jose, or I'll take a road trip down to LA.
Oh yeah, it would be fun. That would definitely be a mind trip. Just
right.
Music again just really just does incredible things. So it's been a pleasure.
Folks, this has been Retro Reload. I have been your host, Dash V. Maybe next week I'll be a different host. I don't know. You'll have to tune in to find out. Until then, take care.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.